My name is Linda. I'm a compulsive eater, and I do what you do. I select my foods off the gray sheet. I write them down. I commit them to my sponsor. I eat everything I commit, nothing in between, no matter what. And I call my sponsor with any questions or mistakes, and I try to do that right away. And my serenity is in direct proportion to my surrender today. And I've been blessed to be doing this since December 20th, 2018. And just the typical format here before and what happened and what's happening now. I was quite isolated and adrift and hated myself, and um, the typical self-loathing that happens as a result of addiction. And I didn't have any interests. I would just go to work every evening. I would rest up and try to get ready to go back to work the next day. I didn't have a lot of energy. It was just survival mode, is what I kept saying to people. And I thought it was because I had rheumatoid arthritis, and I blamed the illness or the medications for the illness, and kept putting on weight and putting on weight and putting on weight, and was miserable and closed off and full of shame. And in the big book, it says too often we fail to realize that the extent to which we are physically, mentally, and spiritually ill. And I definitely had that denial going on. I did not realize. And I was 308 pounds, which is 140 kilos for my European friends here. And I thought I was 5'3", but it turns out later when I had a bone density thing, I'm 5'1". So I thought my body mass index was 55, but in fact, it was most likely 58 because of that height difference. So people start dying off like flies at, BMI of over 50. And so one day I realized I read a study, and I realized my chances of dying within the next year were like 16 times higher than the average weight person. And it alarmed me. And I started to really try to control my diet. I tried restriction. I tried white knuckling. I tried deprivation. I tried praying. And I felt like I knew better. I should have known better, because I was a physician. I am a physician. I should know better. I know what this is doing to my body. I know the fat stores that are building up around my liver and my lungs and my heart. And I know this is really bad for me. And I couldn't stop anyway. There is a study that says doctors take an average of 5 minutes to divulge their doctors. So I wasn't able to wait 5 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And the reason I even bring it up is it has to do with my deep shame. It has to do with why I thought I should know how to do this alone. The fact that I couldn't do it alone was just horrifying to me. So this is me playing doctor in 2015 when I hit a max weight of like 308 pounds, so the 140 kilos. And this is me later that year on oxygen. And I have to apologize. My silly dictation system all of a sudden kicked in. All right, so the pictures that I showed were me of being quite heavy. In fact, this one, I'm standing next to an object and I can't stand for very long, so I'm leaning on the object. And then this one, I've got the oxygen tubes in me. So and I looked miserable as well, not smiling at all. Um, and that was a selfie, so I should have smiled, right? I knew what I was doing. You don't, not smile for pictures, but I felt miserable, so I took a miserable picture. Um, and so I had had a stroke by then. In 2011, I had a stroke. 2015, I probably hit the highest weight. Um, and after the stroke, my doctors decided that I should probably go see a cardiologist because even though I hadn't had any heart attack symptoms, I probably was just a moment away. So I went to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, "You need a bypass. You need a gastric bypass. So go to
Mhm.
this seminar and learn about it." And so I went, and luckily, I say that now, at the time, I didn't know if it was lucky or not, but my perception was, this is our way of weight loss. It's so much better than these people's way of weight loss. And, here's the beautiful, wonderful life you will have after our procedure, as opposed to the life of regaining your weight over here on those people's method. And it just sounded like a commercial to me. So I said, no way, and walked out of there. Um, but I was considering going to a rehab because I'm a psychiatrist, and so rehab is something we do. I work in rehab, and I couldn't stop. And I went to I went home one day after work and was heading towards my stash of carbs. And I could not stop. I talked to myself the whole way there. Linda, don't do this. You are dying from these kind of foods. Don't do this. Don't do this. And I could not stop and was aware I could not stop for the first time. Scared me to death. And and I went to work the next day, and a patient of mine who I had seen overcome opioids and alcohol, and then begin to shrink physically. She had been obese, which is hard to do for a heroin addict. And well, actually, she wasn't a heroin addict; she was just pills. So, um, so this patient came in, and I did something I rarely do, which is divulge my issues to a patient. And I just spontaneously said, "I can't stop eating. What are you doing to lose weight?" And she said, "I weigh and measure my food off the gray sheet. I write it down. I commit it to my sponsor. I eat everything I commit and nothing in between, no matter what. And my serenity is in direct proportion to my surrender." And my little brain went, wow, I could eat foods off a list probably, and I could write them down, and I could tell somebody, and, sure. By that time, I was about 28 years abstinent sober in AA, and had been in a couple of other 12-step programs as well. And so I had a really good background in 12 steps, and I knew about sponsors, and I knew the 12 steps worked. And when she told me it was a 12-step program, I was like, yes, I could do that. And that was a miracle. Um, she didn't tell me much more about it. She just left it at that. And we talked about the fact that there was one tiny little group in the rural town that I live in, and that I could start coming to face meetings there. But since it was a tiny little group, and I'm a psychiatrist, you can't be buddy buddy with your patient. So we talked about transferring her to another provider, and bless her, she agreed to the transfer. And so I went to my supervisor, got permission and everything, and we transferred her. And so I started going to these meetings, but in between there, I called Gray Sheet because I needed more information. You can't find the stinking Gray Sheet on the website, so I couldn't do it alone. And so I had to reach out to the phone number, and I got a what we now call a startup sponsor. And she told me the whole ropes of the Gray Sheet program, had me listing foods at the speed of light, and um, talked to me about how I needed to get a kitchen scale, and I needed to, you know, be prepared to choose foods off these lists and what the quantities were and all that sort of thing. And I kept asking why, but why, and why not that, and why not that? And she would say, you could have that, but you wouldn't be gray sheet abstinent. So she kept
10
putting
minutes.
the
I
choice.
finished. 5 left, Linda.
Thank you so much. She kept putting the choice back on me. And so after a couple days of calling her at the right time and getting more information, she asked me, are you ready to commit your food for the next day? And scared and, timid, I said, sure, and started picking foods off. And I got to the vegetables of lunch, and I could not think of a vegetable I liked to eat that was on the gray sheet. Everything was a carb, really, not a vegetable. And um, so I was stymied for a minute, and she said to me, just pick a vegetable. And that was the moment I realized I don't have to know what I'm feeling tomorrow to pick my food today. And that was freedom. And so uh, I picked a vegetable that I had in a can. So my first meal was not a number 10, but it was abstinent. And so I committed the food on the 19th of December. I was abstinent beginning the 20th of December. And I had a Christmas party on the 21st of December at work. And so I knew if I didn't do this now, I might not want to do it at the end of the holiday season. And so I, decided I need to jump in now and do this. And so she told me before this holiday thing, eat your abstinent lunch, go to the holiday thing, look people in the eyes. And the minute you're watching the food, fork, mouth routine, you need to go. And so I stayed about 15 minutes and watched people pile their plates with these things we don't eat. And so I looked at the plates for a second, of course, but then I was like, no, look at eyes, look at eyes. And that worked for me. 30 days into my depression, 30 days into my abstinence, the depression I had lifted. I hadn't realized, and I'm a psychiatrist, that I had gotten depressed. I thought all I wanted was to die of some horrible disease or accident every day. I didn't come to the awareness that that's depression until it lifted, and it was like the sun came out behind these dark clouds. And then I went, oh wow, I've been really depressed. And it went away. And let's see, at about 100 days, my sponsor took me through the steps. And a couple years after that, I went through an AWOL, and I lost 75 pounds the first year. I lost 50 pounds the second year. I lost 25 pounds the third year. And in the fourth year, I started exercising because I was doing that just with Gray Sheet. I was too lazy to exercise at that point. But the food noise stopped almost immediately. And that was amazing. So this is a serious illness for me. It's a life-threatening illness. And we change illness into wellness by replacing the I with a we. It's a program that requires connection. For me, I have to reach out. I have to be a part of, be in the herd. I do that mostly through service. Um, but there have been many times I've reached out by the phone when my thoughts get squirrely, as I call it. Do I still have time? 1 minute. Thank you, Nancy. I didn't have you pinned up at the top. I apologize. Um, okay. So I keep having this all my life. I've had this I don't belong thought. And like when I entered AA, I was a high bottom alcoholic. And there were actually people that told me you don't belong here because you haven't done what we've done. And luckily I knew the third tradition. So I came back at them with that the only requirement is desire. for membership. And anyway, so I sometimes think since I was kind of a high bottom in this program too, that I don't belong. I haven't earned my stripes to be here. But you don't get to be 308 pounds. My wife told me this recently. You don't get to be 308 pounds without being a compulsive eater. And you don't get to be on oxygen because you can't move your heavy chest without being a compulsive eater. And you don't get to have a stroke in your late 30s because of not being a compulsive eater. And so I certainly belong. I forgot to mention I was in a mobility scooter as well. I couldn't walk.
Linda, time.
Thank you so much. And basically, this is the solution for me today. And I hope you all, along with me, keep coming back. It works. Thank you. Thank you for having me speak.